Yes, my name is Cliff Purvis, former British Army Corporal. I did 24 years in the Army, 14 years with the Queens Own Highlanders and 10 years with the Royal Army Medical Corps.
So you served a long time in the military. You said you were a corporal. Did you ever pursue promotion?
Oh yeah.
So what happened there?
What happened there? Well, after '93, I succumbed to post-traumatic stress and went through a particularly sort of dark area where I didn't do myself any favours. And I'm quite honest about this. I also am responsible for that. But came out of, what was it? My last, probably honest chance of getting a sergeant would have been '97. And we came back from a Slipper City tour of Bosnia. It was the NATO hospital. I was in stores at the time. It was an easy tour, none to it. But I thought I'd done enough work to maybe get my third strike, and it wasn't happening. So I went, fine, I'll now leave the field army, as it's called, and I would really like a posting to training depot or something like that, but ease my time out of the army. Fortunately, the corporal up in Glencorse was wanting away from there, and my adjutant turned around to me and says, "Do you want to go to Glencorse? How do you snap somebody's hand off?" Absolutely, Edinburgh. And whilst I was at Glencorse, I got extended in my service for 2 years as a corporal, which is not that common, but that's how.
Am I right in saying normally it's 22 years?
Yeah, and that's what I meant. I got a 2-year extension. Depending on what rank you get to, they will extend you as well. Sergeants can get extended, that type of thing. So for myself as a corporal, getting those two-year extensions, not unknown of, but it's not particularly known. Yeah.
So when you left the military, can you just talk about your transition from military back to civilian life?
Oh,
yeah. How that went initially?
How it's still going on. Righty, yeah. I really did not have an idea what I was wanting to do when I left the military. I got a job just before leaving the army. In fact, driving spare parts around, right, the Lothian areas. So I had a little van. I was driving these things about, and I thought, this will do me. I'll see out my time doing this. And after about 5 weeks, I was thoroughly bored. I then got a job working in stores of auction house in Edinburgh. Until I did my back in, and again the auction house was very good with me. They gave me more than enough time to recover, but it was just not healing quick enough. I then got a job in the blood bank over at the New Royal in Edinburgh for a year, and it was paying me wages. It was getting me up every day. It was paying me wages. And then one of my former colleagues, a great friend of mine, Jim Ferguson, turned around to me and said, "Why don't you get a job teaching first aid? You like doing that." Sometimes you need the obvious pointed out. So I shotgunned my CV out to every company I thought would be teaching first aid. And Albacare, the company I work for now, they answered me. I went in for an interview, not too far from here actually, and I got the job. And I'm also doing occupational health technician as well. So teaching first aid and doing occupational health technician, and I have been doing that. I was reliably informed yesterday. I am now into my 18th year with them.
So is there anything about your experience as a combat medic that actually helped you prepare for teaching first aid and doing that as a job set, and any other skills that you might utilise beyond that in civilian life?
Well, the skill set of the combat medic obviously is slightly different from first aid at work. But with the knowledge that I have of dealing with casualties, and how you mentioned it earlier on, how do we stay calm? Well, I can certainly impart that part to them. And also, a lot of what we were doing as medics was what we called primary health care. It wasn't the emergency stuff, it was the primary health care. I've got a cold. Yes, you have. What you want me to do about it? That type of thing. Inversion, sporting injuries, that type of thing. So, inversion injuries, sprained ankles, yeah, and that, cracked ribs, and all those type of things. So, yes, I had a good grounding in dealing with casualties, to then be able to turn around and say, right, I was a combat medic, and I do always mention that. I was in another life a combat medic, but we're not going to be dealing with that today, are we? So then I talk them through what they've got in their first aid kits, and we just get on with it, the course.
So what do you think is the most important lesson you've learned from your time in the military? Anything you've taken away with you?
I'm a lot tougher than I think I am.
Can you elaborate?
Resilience. Yeah. The awkward lad that joined the army from Thurso is not the same guy you've seen sitting in front of you today, that's for sure. So I've learned a lot of resilience, and sometimes when things are going not so well, in the home environment, I can use what I've had experienced in my past to say, well, actually, it's not too bad, is it? Yeah, and sort of rein people in at home type of thing.
So you mentioned there, obviously, your home life. How do you think your experiences in the army has impacted your personal relationships and the community involvement that you have now?
Yes, I would say it has. I met my wife just not too long before I left the army, which I'm glad about. She's a wonderful woman. I don't think we would have been able to keep up a relationship with all me going all over the place and at the behest of the government. And she has put up with a heck of a lot of me as I've adjusted, especially before I got help from a post-traumatic stress. And we're through that now, and we've been together 21 years now.
And you mentioned you've got PTSD, and I know there's organisations that look to help veterans who are suffering with PTSD. Is there anything you're involved with in the community that you want to talk about?
Not so much in the community, but what I'd like to say, if there is anybody out there that is suffering in silence, there is huge amount of charitable people, charitable organisations out there, especially in Scotland. Scottish Government cross-party organisations that are focused now on trying to catch the veterans and hopefully talk things through with them, before it becomes too much of an issue. There will always be, unfortunately, people that slip through the net. It shouldn't happen, but it does. Quite often, people will leave the military and not give forwarding addresses. They're not. They don't have to, but there are people out there, and I do have a peer drop-in thing that we do on Zoom twice a month with a psychologist, and we just chat about the day's events. It's not necessarily chatting about military stuff, but so yeah, that is helping.
You mentioned you're not the same awkward lad that joined the military. Is there anything you have then from before your time in the military that you still have now that's helped shape, that you could take with you in the military?
Rotten sense of humour. Yeah, I've still kept my accent, I think. But a rotten sense of humour. I always was brought up with manners, so I've still got that. But I mean, you can't do 24 years in the armed forces without being altered by it, and quite dramatically in some cases.
What was your favourite moment or experience whilst you were in the military? Or your top three, if you've got a couple.
Leaving Saudi airspace when we flew out from the Gulf. We were on a very lightly packed aircraft. It was a civilian aircraft for the RAF crew. And as soon as we got outside of Saudi airspace, the flight attendants came round with beer, and then turned round more unusually and said we could smoke as well. It was absolutely fantastic. It was just a moment, you know what I mean? So that was one of them. The ceasefire, when it came into effect during the first Gulf, that was a huge moment as well. Looking at this guy, John Bowie, and me just looking at each other, and we've been wearing the NBC suits, the gas suits for 4 days, and they're charcoal lined, so we're absolutely fussy, but happy. Getting in the split from the it wasn't split at all. It was Tom Slavgrad in the Bosnia tour. We had all the guys outside, all the medics, squadrons worth, and I was doing the unload for them. I'm a skeleton arms instructor by that time, so I was detailed to do the unload. And when I shouted the unload order, they reckoned they could have probably heard it a couple of 100 miles up country.
Can you share another funny or interesting story from some of the different locations that you served around? Anything that's humorous? And
this is where the interview falls flat in its face, because I'm terrible at telling stories. One of my colleagues actually turned around to me the other week there and says, "You never talk about things, Cliff." That's because I'm rubbish at talking at telling stories. I suppose one of the funniest things was, if any of you at all are familiar with the film The Life of Brian, at the end of it, where they're singing the song Always Look on the Bright Side of Life. We were doing some work over in Northern Ireland, and it was a job that involved, we couldn't have any overhead protection, so we didn't have ponchos up or anything like that. And it absolutely chucked it down. And we had just been issued the Gore-Tex bivy bags that go over the top of the sleeping bag. And the patrol commander stood up, and there must have been about 1.5 feet of water in his bivy bag. So we all stood up and just sung the Always Look on the Bright Side of Life. In the middle of a thunderstorm in a field in Northern Ireland. But you had to be there to get the funny side of it, I suppose.
You can picture that, you can see.
Yeah.
What about during your free time when you were in the military? What did you do there? Was there things you could do? Was there stuff put on that you could learn, educate, or just fun?
Yeah, just fun, basically. Local places. If you weren't on a tour, I mean, you were in barracks. It was just the same as being anywhere else in the world. You went out on Friday, Saturday, and you lived a champagne lifestyle on beer wages. Yeah, but again, Hong Kong, probably the best nightlife in the world. But I still reckon I was probably a couple of years too young to appreciate what Hong Kong was about. But yeah, so Hong Kong was fantastic. Germany is a fantastic place to be out in, but I like German beer, so. Yeah.
What disciplines do you find are most important then when transitioning back to civilian life? You say resilience being one.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you think that's helpful that people should, when they start to maybe consider the transition back across?
Oh, if other people are getting to the stage now in their career where it is coming to an end, as all careers do, you need to start planning what you're going to be doing in Civilian Street well in advance. Yeah, and you've got to test, if you're thinking of doing a job, you've got to test what the market is for it. Yeah, is the market saturated with health and safety people? Yeah, is the market saturated with other types of things? Most people leaving the military would easily pick up a job in security, but is that really what you want to do for the rest of your life? Type of thing, or driving is another go-to one. And yes, there is a shortage of big wheel drivers in the UK at the moment. But my advice to anybody about to leave the military is get your CV relevant to what job you're applying for. and you will face rejection. They will say no, and it's horrible. But we've all been there. Right, yeah, so from the inside out, basically, they're mounted in the order they were awarded. So the first medal there is the General Service Medal with Northern Ireland clasp. You get that for 30 days or more serving in Northern Ireland during the Banner period, which was the British Army involvement across there. Next medal in is the South Atlantic Medal, which I only got in, I think it was 2012 or something like that. They finally did a rethink about who qualified for the medal and who didn't qualify. And the Queens Own Highlanders were finally awarded it back then. So it doesn't have, for the guys and girls that fought during the campaign down there, they will have a cluster, a wee star in the middle of the ribbon, and that means they took part in the fighting. And you can see it's not on there, so we didn't actually take part in the fighting. Next to that, then you have the Gulf War Medal, 1991, awarded for the, well, in fact, we're just coming up to the anniversary of that now, 24th of February to the, it's the 18th of January to 28th of February. I think that one's start of the air war, all the way through to the end of the ground offensive. Then I do need to look down. Yeah, it's the UN medal next. That was for Bosnia, United Nations Protection Force Bosnia. Next to that is the NATO medal for Bosnia, former Yugoslavia. That was the 96-97 tour, and that was absolutely slipper city, as we call it, working in the stores at the hospital there. Then we got, next to that is the Jubilee medal. I believe it's the second Jubilee medal, or as most people call it, the second Battle of Jubilee. Right. And then beside that, I've got the Accumulative Service Medal. That is for doing 1,080 days on operational tour, minimum. And I only know that because I had to ask a friend of mine last night about it. I completely forgot. And then the next one to that is the Long Service and Good Conduct Medal, 15 years undetected crime. I had an absolutely fantastic time in the military. Okay, I ended up with PTSD, right? But, you know, the way I cope with that is think about the times that nothing to do with the PTSD. I have seen sunrises, sunsets, and all sorts of places, and out in Kenya, giraffes, they really do run in slow motion. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely fantastic time in the military. Yeah.
And is there any part of knowledge you might pass on to any young people who maybe consider themselves?
No, I've never suggested to anybody that they should join up. If they are thinking about it, think about what it is you want to do. Yeah. It's not. I couldn't really give any advice to people joining up now because it's not the same military. You know, it's greatly reduced in size. Myself and another veteran were having a chat about that a few weeks ago. Yeah, we don't think we'd actually get past the recruiting phase. It's gone all professional. Yeah.